Today I will finally be doing a project with my Cricut maker, and I found these arrows at Dollar Tree a while back. I'm going to be giving this a base coat, and I want this to be sort of a beach theme, so I'm just going to paint it sort of roughly and give it like a whitewash look. And the way you do that is just kind of use a dry brush. You don't want to load up with a lot of paint. You just kind of want to rub it in until it runs out, and so it's streaky and you see a lot of spots. And I like to go the same direction when I do it, but pretty easy to achieve a whitewash look because you're just doing a patchy job. You're not doing a solid coat. And then you can go on and streak some other color on there, which for me, I'm going to do darker background because I want the letters on here that are going to be cut using the Cricut. I want those to be done in a white color, so I want my background to make sure it's a good contrast. I don't want anything too light in the background, so I have this color here, the teal, and to sort of darken it up, make it look a little rough and maybe weathered, I've got the gray color there in the palette, so I'll use that one in the same fashion, just very dry brush. I'm not going to overload it, and kind of go into some of the gaps here, and that way you see the wood grain and it makes it look a little weathered. And here in Florida there's a lot of people that have a beach theme in their houses anyways. I'm not even going to get the edge on this. I'm going to leave the edge plain, but I guess also if you have a pool area, some people like to put beach signs out by the pool. This one's just going to say the word beach, but I think something like this could have different sayings on there, and you can just have like a one word going across. Thought about different words like relax or adventure or something like that, but I'm going to go with beach because I have a whole lot of seashells that I want to use. So I pulled out a couple of different neat looking shells that I can maybe try to incorporate on there. This one might be a little too big, but it is cool. And also pulled out some sand and some glue that I might, when it's all done, I might just go over and maybe put some patches on there of glue, and then let the sand kind of look like it's stuck on there. Also, a good thing about making sure you're doing this like a whitewash style and using a very dry brush is that your paint is going to be dry when you're all done. So you really won't have to hit it with the dryer at all, and you won't have to wait for it to dry if you don't have a dryer. Because when you go to put your stick-on vinyl from the Cricut, you definitely don't want your whatever background you're sticking it onto to still be tacky, because it's not going to stick. So wherever you think you want some little spots, make this sign look like it's been around a while, kind of old. And I think a lot of times the actual old looking signs that we see are made to look that way. They're actually not naturally old and gross looking. So, and again, just going the same direction. I'm going just up and down with my strokes. It's better to do it this way because I'm going with the grain, so it just looks better. And then really you can just, with a very dry brush, can't even see it coming off if I brush it on my skin, but with a really dry brush you can just kind of dig it in and just get a very light look on the edge if you want to kind of give a little shadow there on the edge. I'm pretty happy with the way this looks, and I know that I'm going to be covering over some areas anyways with the sand and the shells. Oh yeah, and I pulled out some ribbon, a little burlap ribbon. I might put a bow somewhere. Maybe the bow will go on the hanger. I don't know. Maybe like on the bottom or on the top of the hanger. We'll figure that out later. Anyway, this is mostly dry, and I'm going to get set up with my lettering and kind of explain a little bit about how I did that using the Cricut. So here is the beautiful Cricut maker. I've got it set up and plugged in. I've got the cord running here behind me. I'm gonna leave it like that, and I'm gonna prepare my my sticky board. So your Cricut will come with one of these, and I've got a couple of different kinds of vinyl here to show. There's the glossy one like this. This is just a stick-on vinyl, so it's a sticky back. And you can do lettering on something like this, the glossy one. But I think for a rough looking beach sign that's supposed to look old, I want it to look a little, not so shiny and new. So I got a white one, of course, to go with the look. So I've got the dark background, and there'll be the white vinyl on there. But this is matte, so they make it a matte and glossy. So same thing. It just has the transfer paper on the back that you can peel away when you're ready to stick it on. And I'm just going to cut a piece that's as big as I need it to be. I don't want it to cut too close, but I know that to fit on here, the lettering that I chose is going to be a little less than 2 inches, and it's going to be roughly 8 inches across. So I kind of need to make a piece that's about 2 inches, and I'm going to be a little generous just to be sure that I have plenty. So I'm going to do about 2 inches this way and about 8 inches across. Just to be sure I have enough, but I don't want to waste it, so you can always save an extra piece. If it's, you know, a little square, a little rectangle, you can save it and put it back into the tube. And with this one, I'm just going to have some scraps that I'll be tossing, because this will be too small because I cut this right to size. You peel this off. This can get dusty, so you want to make sure you always put the little plastic covering back on there and keep that clean. And then you're going to put the transfer side on the back, the waxy part that peels away, that's going to be sticking down. So you just put it up in the corner and you stick it down. And then, you know, you have your measurements. Cricut always wants to cut from the corner up here. There is a way that you can change those settings. But if you're using a phone, like I'm going to be doing today, you don't have a way to change it or tell it where to print, so it's always going to print from this upper left corner. I'm sticking it on really well. If your boards or your sticky mat has been used multiple times, you're going to probably need to really press it on there, because if it loosens while it's cutting, then your whole cut is going to get messed up. It's going to be offset and it's not going to look right. So you just want to make sure, especially on the edges and the corners, make sure it's stuck down really well. Okay, now it's ready to load, and then I'm going to be using the app on my phone to get this set up, but I have the word beach, and I actually found it as, I'm just going to turn this on, and it's going to spin and make some noise. It's already got the right blade in there. It's got the regular, just the fine point blade, because we're just cutting regular vinyl, nothing fancy, nothing thick. So you can find an image, as long as it's a PNG, Cricut can black out the image and take away whatever colors on there, and it can just set the image for you, and you can size it to fit your paper and your project. So so I thought that was pretty cool, because that way I didn't have to buy any of the fonts. Of course, I liked a lot of the fonts on the Cricut app, but you know, for a one-time use, I didn't want to spend $5 on a font. So let me get this set up. Let me tell the Cricut machine what to do, and it's just a couple of buttons that I have to press in my app, and then we'll get this cut and peeled away. So I have my image set to go. I'm just going to hit the feed button here, which is the flashing arrow. It kind of flashes and walks you through it and tells you exactly what to do. And then you can hit the cut button, and it's going to do its thing. This is also a good time for you to see if you really stuck your paper or your vinyl down well. You'll know that by now, because once it rolls and moves it all around with these little rubber grippers, that's when it'll kind of shake things around and it'll loosen it if it's not stuck down well. So hopefully I did a good enough job sticking it down. It does a lot of ups and downs and does a lot of different movements, and you'll just kind of have to let it do its thing, and it'll feed out when it's done. I think it's just about done, and it's now flashing with the little arrow, the feeder button, so that means it's ready to come out, and you're not going to be able to see a whole lot of anything on here, but if I kind of tilt it so the light hits it, there you go, and you can kind of see the word beach is on there, and it's so cool because it's got a little patchy, almost like a stencil, kind of missing some parts here, and it gave it that neat little wiggly look around the letter, so it looks like it was stamped on there, and it's going to just barely fit on the top of my little arrow that I'm going to be putting it onto. So now I'm going to show you how to get it off. I'm going to turn this thing off. I don't want to keep the Cricut on for no reason because they're done, so let's turn it off. You close this door first, and the other one goes on top. Kind of a heavy door, so, and then I'll unplug it. Okay, so now you can use a tool like this little spatula shimmy. It's a Cricut tool. Can't remember if it comes with it or if you have to buy it separate. If you don't have one of these, you could just use like a cake spatula or anything that's nice and thin like that to kind of shimmy underneath. So the cool thing is the Cricut is really smart, and it knows when you select what type of material you're printing on. In this case, we were cutting on vinyl, and it knows to only cut the top layer, not the bottom layer. And what I mean by that is there's two layers here. There's vinyl on top, and then there's the waxy paper on the bottom, and it knows not to cut through the waxy paper. It just kind of scores the top to get the letters cut, and then the rest of it, it just leaves it in the back. So it lets us take this whole piece up, and this is a thing that I just never understood when I would, I kind of knew how Cricuts worked. I knew the original Cricut, and that's the one that I learned how to use. I didn't know what all these new fancy ones did. And I thought, okay, well, how do you get each little letter peeled off and stuck onto the transfer paper? Because I'd watched videos and see them using the transfer paper, so I knew that was a thing. But just didn't understand how you could get them off and stick them on straight. But this one just explains it all so well. So let me get this out of the way. I'm going to cover it up with the plastic again, just to make sure it stays clean and no dust gets on there. Like that. Doesn't matter if there's air bubbles, it's just gonna cling on there. Okay, so now this is where you can use this in a couple different ways. Sometimes you might only have a couple different colors of vinyl. I've only got the white and black, that's it. So if I want to use this as a stencil to use whatever color I want, I can do that. I can use the outer part as a stencil, and that's an option. But in this case, I'm going to use the letters, so I'm going to peel away the outer part. If you wanted to use it as a stencil, you would take your little, some sort of little, this is another Cricut tool, but you could just use anything sharp, tweezers or whatever, little needle even, like a fat sewing needle, that's fine. So if you're going to use this as a stencil, you would just pick these off and peel them away, the little letters that we can see on there that spell out beach, okay? And then you would be using the outer part. But since we're not going to be doing that, we're going to peel away the outside. So you should just fold it down a little bit. And this one peels up really easy, actually. The shiny one did not peel up so easy. Be careful as you're pulling it off, because you don't want to rip your letters. You don't want to accidentally pull one up either before it's ready to come up, and then you have to figure out how to get it back down on the waxy paper. I'm also going to be careful not to stick my fingers too much all over the stencil, because if I'm careful with it and I don't let it curl up on top of itself, I might be able to use it as a stencil, the outer part, which is what it looks like to me, so it just makes sense. Just go very, very slow. If you need somebody else to help you at this point, grabbing the other side of it. And this is okay, good. So I can save this. I'm actually just going to stick this down on top of my cover on my mat. So I just stuck it down right here so I can use it again on something else another time. As long as it didn't wrinkle, we're good. All right. Then you have to use this little tool to go inside and pull the insides out if you need to. If you need help getting the inside of your B and your A. And this one, that's all we've got. Okay, so now you just have your letters. This would be a lot easier to see if it was a colored one, but again, I'm going to be putting it right here, just like that. Okay, and I want it to stay just like it is. So the old way with the original Cricut was so crazy, because the hardest part was lining it all up. You would have to sit there and figure out, okay, peel off each paper. I didn't even do it on the sticky back. You'd have to do it on a piece of paper. I'm going to cut a piece of transfer paper that's the same size. I think I can do it. Yeah, I can squeeze it on there. I'm just cutting some of this stuff. This is kind of like contact paper. Looks like it too, because it's got the grid on there. And this is just clear. So on the original one, you would have to cut your paper die cuts, and then you'd have all these letters all mixed up in a pile. Then you'd have to get a ruler out or a yardstick and make sure your letters were glued on straight. They were never as straight as you thought they were going to be. They could look straight when you were standing right up next to it, and then you stand back and look at the sign or whatever it was that you made, and you got all kinds of crooked letters, and it would look kind of silly. All right, so I'm just going to peel this part off. So this is going to be just a piece of clear paper, clear transfer paper. Stuff is kind of weird. It's very sticky, but at the same time not, because it can peel off of whatever you stick it onto. So I cut just the size I need, and I'm going to stick it down right on top of the letters that spell out beach. It doesn't have to be straight, just as long as it's covering all of your letters. And this stuff you want to stick really well, not so much to this waxy background, but you want to make sure you're sticking it really well on your letters, because this stuff is going to pick up your letters and move them for you. So rub them with your fingernail and just make sure they're really on there, because you don't want to leave any little pieces behind or rip your letters as you're transferring them. This is where the magic happens, and this is like the part that was so confusing to me, just so baffling before I actually got the Cricut out of the box and tried it out myself. I had to watch a video actually to figure it out, because this is not so self-explanatory to me. All right, I think I rubbed them off pretty good. Now this is the weird part. It looks like they're going to stay on there. It doesn't look like they're going to move, but somehow they come off on the transfer paper as long as you peel it off carefully and as long as you are really good about sticking them all on there. Again, very slowly. Peel very slowly. If you see anything happening, any letters coming up as you're doing this, just go right back down and stick them back onto the paper. Because once they come up and they're not even anymore, you're not going to be able to figure out how to get them even. It's got these handy little lines to help you kind of see where you're going to be putting it onto the piece that you're doing. So that's kind of cool because, you know, if the piece you're doing is not straight, well, mine is because it's an arrow, but if the piece you're doing is not, then you want to make sure that, you know, you're doing something round. You want to make sure you're even on both sides or whatever. So that's kind of nice that it gives you that option. And really cool, and I hope that more people discover that you can use just regular PNG images found on the internet. And if you have a program that can take an image and turn it into a PNG, that's even better because you can use pretty much any shape you want. You just don't want anything with too many little small pieces on there because then, you know, you risk it breaking when you go to peel it off. But yeah, you see all kinds of anything, pretty much any shape you want, any lettering you want, it's all out there. PNG. Just search for that, make sure you save it. PNG is the background looks like a white and gray checkerboard. That's how you know. Some of them are fake, some of them look like it, but then it just won't work if it's fake, that's all. And the Cricut is so smart, it'll figure out what to do with it. All right, so they're all on there. This way they're backwards, this way they're forwards. It works the same way on the t-shirts too. This is how they do it, this is how they line it all up. Okay, so here's my arrows. You can see what's going on here. I got my stencil that says beach. I'm going to center it right there. Everything's going to stick down right now, but the only thing that's going to stay is the letters. So stick really good on the letters. Make sure you're pressing them hard with your nail. If you don't have nails, use a scraper, something like this. I'm showing all these fancy proprietary Cricut tools that you definitely don't have to use. Sorry that I'm using them. You can use anything. You can use a butter knife or a spoon for this part. Please don't buy the fancy stuff if you don't have to. You can use a lot of stuff around the house. All right, I'm just kind of doing this quickly. Take your time with this. Don't be quick. Don't rush. All right, the big reveal. Let's get this up. Peel it slowly. Always peel it slowly because you start to think, oh wow, it's on there really good, and then you pull it really fast and then you messed up and one of your letters stuck behind. Usually not so much on something like this because the wood it adheres really well on the wood, but you know, maybe if you were putting it onto something smoother or soft like fabric, it could move around. There it is. And it's so cool, and it's very thin. The vinyl, you can barely feel it on there. You can always go over it with a sealer if you want to. I'm just going to go, I've got my glue gun plugged in on the other side of the room. So I'm going to make a bow real quick, glue some shells on here so I can just kind of touch it up and give it some extra little doodads to make it special. I don't know, probably put them over here, maybe the bow on the handle or somewhere, and I think I'm going to throw some sand on there too just to make it look kind of cool. But it is really simple, and this little font here probably would have cost me $5 if I bought it through the Cricut app. No, I just went and found a PNG and I saved it and was able to resize it. The only thing about it is with the Cricut app, if you buy your font or use a free one, whatever, but if you buy a really cool one, it gives you the option to adjust the spacing between your letters. So on something like this, I could have spread the letters out a little more if I wanted them to stay the same height but just reach a little further out. So that would have been kind of cool. And I was actually trying to do it, and then I realized, why isn't it working? And I was like, oh, because it's an image. It doesn't know that those are letters. It doesn't know how to space them apart because it sees it as one solid image on the computer screen. So that's the only thing that I don't like about it. But other than that, it works perfect, and you can find almost any font, maybe even more, because you have access to the whole internet.